All right, 30 seconds is up. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is my favorite time, bi-weekly. I actually haven't done one of these, but I had an OOBE show in between. He called in from India, so that was kind of a fun one. He was in India, I was here in Holland, Michigan. But I have some special guests and some very exciting news today. Maybe we go into introductions. And while we're doing introductions, if people join on the show, we're going to give a few minutes for people to join. But I'm going to add to the stream the unboxing I did of the Azure Percept Development Kit. And I think there's two parts to this. There's the dev kit with the video module, the camera module, and then there's the audio module that hooks up, and that's a separate kit. So I'm going to play that while we go to our special guests so that they can do introductions. But I know a lot of people are going to join today and want to see kind of the dev kit. So I'm going to show that. And we'll talk about, what it is, what it means. There's a lot of acronyms and different words, so put in the chat if you have any questions. But here goes the unboxing video. So this is a premiere of my second unboxing video. So bear with me. So let's see if we can get this to work. Is it? Oh, here we go. All right. So anyways, Andrew or Owen, right? Is that how you pronounce, or Ian?
It's pronounced Owen. It's pronounced exactly the way it's spelled, silent E in 2 syllables. So thanks for having me on, Charles. Eoin Callan here from SeaCastle. Delighted to talk about the Azure Percept with SolisMatica today. And my background is primarily with project management. So I'm an old school PMP, and I've been using Microsoft projects for longer than I care to admit. And taken a really deep dive in the Microsoft technologies in the past year, and really started to appreciate what we can do with Azure in the cloud and AI and machine learning and all that, and how we can incorporate that with project management. So that's my focus on it, is how we can leverage this technology to improve project management data.
All right. Thank you, Owen. All right. So Andrew, can you do a quick intro and while we play the video here, or I see a request to, are you okay with video?
Yeah, I don't know what was happening with my video there, but looks like I got it fixed just in time. So, hey, I'm Andrew Hoekstra. I started Pointe Vector, which is an independent consultancy dealing primarily with machine learning. So I do machine learning projects for a wide variety of industries, usually around time series data. A lot of times it's business data, but my roots are actually with video cameras, doing things like driver assistance for vehicles, and then other sensors with like autonomous robots and stuff. So I'm really excited about this development kit because it's going to be getting me a little bit more back to my roots.
Oh, wow. So we got project management, we got dev kits, and then, you know me, renewables, IoT, 3D printers. You see one in the background there. I just love anything that is new and exciting. And when I learned about this, so a little quick story, and maybe you guys have quick stories too about your exposure to edge computing. But I heard about a Microsoft hackathon. It was the AI Look Listen. Owen, do you remember the
Look Listen and Innovate?
And I applied for it, and I had kind of a fun project where you go to a networking event and you scan the room and use vision to detect stuff, and then you compile all the data and help people with at a networking event. And I applied, and my project was one of the ones that won. And I was like, oh wow, it won. So what do I do now? So I gotta start learning Edge, right? So before this, what was funny is Edge to me meant the browser. So they launched the Percept device last week, and and I remember you and I were emailing each other, and autocorrect changes it to Percept, I think, right? Yeah. So I was like, oh, Percept, I gotta figure out all these words, and then I was like, well, I got to get my hands on, kind of this dev kit and start learning it. But the other question I had was, I was trying to do this on a Raspberry Pi. I found a couple of tutorials, and it was just too many steps. I mean, too many steps. I was going to Raspberry Pi site, trying to install Microsoft Edge runtime, doing on a Linux system. I was learning about Docker. I downloaded Visual Studio Code. I was doing all these extensions, learning about the IoT Hub extension in Visual Studio Code. And I was like, this is so many steps, so many pieces. Is there a way to make this easy? And I think what I learned about the Azure Percept is I see their vision with this. This is trying to make AI, vision, IoT, all in a single package that has a nice wrapper around it that you can get to your test lab and get started within an hour. I see the vision, so it's an incredible thing. But Eoin and Andrew, any stories about how you came upon Edge, and maybe kind of an explanation of IoT and AI on the edge?
Sure. So I'll share a quick story in terms of what caught my eye for the IoT in the first place. You may remember a couple of years ago, at least 5 or 6 at this point, there was like a Christmas present of people who were using socks as a television remote. Right? You could control the TV with your socks, right? And so I was attracted to that idea. And that was when I first started to learn about wearables and the IoT vision of the world of wearables and how that's been around for a couple of decades at this point. And so I started to try and build a pair of socks that I could use to turn off my television. And so you talk about stuff that was convoluted in terms of there's this piece over here and that piece over there. We had to make circuit boards and start putting wires into the slots to make the electrical bits for the ground and all the interrupts and all that, to learn Xamarin in order to be able just to turn the stuff on and to send it instructions in the first place before you could start to use it. So one of the things that I've really appreciated about the Percept is there are... when you're looking at that board that's just showing right there, there's 3 pieces to that. There's the dev kits, there's the camera, and then there's the microphone array, right? Each one of those is itself a complex piece of communication and telemetry to try and work with.
Yeah.
But Microsoft has put it all on one page. And so again, it's looking to put all the different pieces into one wrapper, and it is a worthwhile vision to move forward. It's moved well beyond the realm of the hobbyist. You can use this for business functions if you want to put it to professional use.
Oh, good point. Yeah. So and Andrew, if you want to tag on to that, tell us a little bit about your experience with the edge computing and how you came onto it. But my very first experience with edge computing was actually my first professional engineering experience. I had an internship in 2009 with a company that was making this wearable device to help swimmers and their coach communicate better. And so there were sensors all over the swimmer's body. It would use accelerometers and all that type of stuff. And one of the really interesting, I won't go too much into detail on this because it could take a long time, but one of the interesting problems with this is because the devices are going underwater, wireless communications just die. So you've got such a short window in order to transmit just a little bit of information as the sensor comes out of water. So it was a really important aspect of this project to get all of that compute happening on the actual edge device on the swimmer's body and only transmit up a little bit of information that's been summarized. So that to me is the sort of extreme of edge AI or edge machine learning, because you really can't get any closer to the end user than actually strapping the device on the person. I think a lot of times when people talk about edge compute, we're thinking from the cloud perspective where, yes, there's a centralized region where you're normally doing all your compute and you like to try to push those out maybe on-prem is what's considered edge
for a lot of people. But I think development kits like this, accelerating the pace at which we can make what I would call true edge solutions, is going to shift that sort of the vernacular there to really be what I would consider edge compute and AI out at the edge.
Yeah. No, great points. That's a great example. I always love applications. Swimming is one. At your remote TV remote. So what this does is it generates and makes this real for people. And I want to revisit something about Edge. Is kind of the confusion I had, right? What is Edge? And Andrew, you kind of touched on it a little bit. And let me take this off the. So we're going to do a little bit later too a video of kind of my experience with the out-of-box wizard that they have to set up this edge device, and it's going to kind of show you how instead of having to go to 10 different places, Microsoft's vision of making one central setup, where all the keys. You've been in Azure, you know how many keys there are, all the different resources, and you got to get keys. It was incredible in that I saw what they were trying to do: make one page, make all the keys kind of seamless and all right there, and make the setups just a breeze, right? But I want to revisit. So we're going to have a lot of people that probably went through what I went through 3-4 weeks ago. Is what Edge AI is out there, vision is out there. Why Edge, right? And why manufacturing? And you can kind of see Microsoft's, the device, the dev kits are mounted on a piece of extrusion, right? Typical for manufacturing locations. And I was like, this is brilliant because it talks to the people in that industry in manufacturing. And Edge to me, and you guys can chime onto this, but Edge to me is important for manufacturing because a lot of times in the factory you've got machine learning and you don't have time to send all that sensor telemetry data up to a cloud, wait for it to come back, and the time for that data to go out, do its processing, and come back it's too long. That machine's broke, or something's gone wrong with it, something's cracked, the bearing's done, whatever. So this idea of compute right on board, right? You're not even on-prem, you're on board. You have computers that are fast enough, cheap enough that you can run this, type of AI on board, make the connections you need before you even send to the cloud. The other fascinating thing, and I think is really big about this, is why it's important for manufacturing and vision, is because vision is so dense, the data is so big, you don't want to stream and record all this data, right? But onboard AI on board on the edge now can do that calculation, find the bits and pieces, and and then send that to the cloud if it needs to, and or send the other stuff. But it can do some pre-processing on that video and then go right back without any latency before waiting for the cloud to process all this, right? So those were two huge breakthroughs for me, and that's why I'm so geeked out. You could kind of tell I've been talking. I'm going to let other people talk, but I am totally geeked out. This is when I found out about Bluetooth, 10 years ago, I was geeked out like this. When I found out about PowerBI, I was, exploding. And so this is the way I feel about edge computing, and I wanted to kind of bring it to people to see the application. Oh, and one more thing, and maybe we'll go round table, but traffic, you don't have time when you're monitoring vehicles and you have an accident waiting to happen. You can't wait for that video data to get uploaded, processed, and come back. You need to process it on-prem, on board, on the edge, and then get to that, site and make those changes right away. So those are some applications. So, Owen, maybe you can, do you have any ideas or applications?
Sure. Yeah, I've got some immediate examples that come to mind where this would be incredibly helpful. For instance, I had a customer where we were helping a pulp and paper mill keep track of their maintenance projects. So they would occasionally shut down the refinery or a piece of the facility so that they could refurbish or retrofit whatever they needed to do, right? And in one particular case, and so we built a system for them that was heavily project management oriented, but had built in some safety observations and factors. For instance, they have something they call the lockout tagouts, so that a piece of equipment can't be started back up until it's determined completed with all its maintenance work, and that's incredibly important for safety. That's and we came on premises one morning to find out that the previous day there had been a slight hiccup in their communications and in their own processes. And it turns out that there was a work team of half a dozen people that were scrubbing out the inside of a boiler that were potentially one step away from having that boiler turned back on them while they were inside it.
Oh, wow.
All right. So that's a very extreme example, but working around refineries, we had other customers who were mines, for instance, and those are places where it's very challenging for Wi-Fi types of signals to be sent back and forth. Cameras don't get tired. The AI on the boards can be watching for all of those crew members on the work sites and see if they're outside the danger zone that's been marked before anything else can be turned on, type of thing. So that's an immediate no-brainer where this type of thing can come
wow. Yeah, that is incredible. Like, that's an application I didn't, but I know how important lockout tagout is. And if you have CRAMA's training to make sure that, okay, you detect a person, they're in an area, this device that I'm looking at here isn't tagged out, you can send, warnings and stuff. It's like, oh, here, reminder, go lock and tag this out before you get on that equipment. So, oh my gosh, yeah. that is a great application of that. So
camera and safety is an excellent application. I actually have a brief story around that one back from my railroad days. There was this piece of test equipment that we had that used a massive hydraulic press to essentially bend the steel rail that trains run on, because what they were testing is the weld strength. So this is a company that did continuous welding for rail. So they would cut a piece of rail, they'd weld it back together, and then put it in this fixture that would basically press down on it until it bent and snapped. So you can imagine up to 550 tons of pressure being applied to steel. When it finally snaps, it just practically explodes and sends pieces of rail all over the place. So they had this in a somewhat remote location, and all the controls that I was using to run these tests were inside of a building. And one of the first things that we did once we got this test fixture set up was just set a camera right outside in front of that test fixture, because I actually had it happen in the middle of the test at almost the breaking point. Somebody started walking through to the test fixture and was going to open up the doors. And I was able to, by seeing that camera, manually stop the test. But that's a prime example when like safety is critical. Just having a camera that can do basic person detection and then lock something out if somebody's in that space is a no-brainer application.
Wow, that is, I think video with AI is going to be, this is game-changing stuff. And before, I think the price point, and there's multiple things that kept it out of people's hands, one of which is the complexity of it. And that's why I'm going to show this video here, kind of the out-of-box experience. And I try to blur all my keys and everything, because there's a lot of keys and stuff, right? But we'll just walk through this while we talk. But it's got an onboard Wi-Fi. I don't know how the setup was so simple, right? You found your Wi-Fi hotspot, you logged into it. You set up SSH, and and we're going to talk about some of the things we learned. There's still some hiccups in here, but just to get this on Friday and have it working the next day, after working through a couple of hiccups, I understand what they're trying to get through, because I went through that Raspberry Pi experience where it was, a complete nightmare trying to set up all the codes. And you can see here, it gives you a code. You sign into your Azure account, you type in the code on the other side, and then you're pretty much off and running, right? So this was huge. So kind of talk, Owen, maybe talk about your experience and maybe some of the learnings you had, with your unit.
Sure. So first of all, in full transparency and disclaimer, the video that you're seeing there, I don't know how much longer that's intended to be around, because that was part of the onboarding experience as part of the preview. And so I don't know which pieces of these will be carried over, but the one piece that was incredibly helpful for me, that's you're going to see where it says to generate a code. And so you go to log into Azure and you just give it that code, and it finds the resource that it needed to set up. And prior to using that onboarding experience, I had tried to manually prepare the environments. And I'm not the world's greatest Azure person, but I've been an IoT engineer inside Microsoft's technology for several years at this point, actually, but mostly as a hobbyist type of thing. But I've watched the IoT worlds be completely disparate and now starting to coalesce into a cohesive unit. And even then, I'm still personally confused about where is the IoT hub being used, for instance, versus the Azure Percept Studio. And by the way, every time I turn around, I'm finding a new studio that needs to be used because because not only is there the Percept Studio, which I think is what replaces that out-of-the-box experience that we just saw there. But there is also the customvision.ai platform, and then there's the speech studio, and who knows what other studios other people are working on out there that Microsoft themselves may not have been talking to each other about until they find out at a conference like this, for instance, that's they need to get together. But one of the most fascinating things about this, if this is something that appeals to you, the documentation that they've put together is extensive and thorough. So it is available for you to work your way through this if you do find challenges in trying to work with it.
Yeah, so I'm showing the video now, and this is part of the documentation, and it is really good. That's what I learned is, I was trying the commands for the demo. This is part of what I think Microsoft did so well, is they are releasing all these demos so that out of the box, I can just download. So I'm in the Azure Percept Studio here, and I downloaded this, and 3 minutes later onto my Edge device, I was telling it to turn the defroster off, and the image was updating. I think at the end here, I turned the temperature up to 70, and I think, it responded, and there it goes to 70. So, they're making it so simple, and they have these dashboards now where, you can click on your device, your speech module, your vision module, and then walk through the different steps in those. Incredible that they're trying to group everything. But before,
did you see the speech, the audio content video? Did you watch that?
I don't think I did.
So it's speech.microsoft.com. I watched somebody copy an entire web page of text and plug it into the speech studio, and then change who the speaker was for each paragraph, change the pitch, the intonation, whether they were disgruntled or they were happy. It's incredible the depth and the nuances that you have available on just the speech side.
Yeah. And on the speech, and then the video side, you saw there, I had out of the box, you can, the web stream already has a module in it, and it was recognizing things throughout the house. And this isn't even trained, right? So once I trained it, and then you go, customvision.ai, and you log in and you upload a bunch of pictures and you tag them. And I did a fun one. I was like, well, somebody once said I look like Keanu Reeves, so I uploaded pictures of Keanu Reeves, 30 of them and 30 of me. And I started uploading other pictures of me. And, once you get around 30, the recognition was up in the 90 percentile, right? So I was like, and it was so simple. The interface, Custom Vision AI, was so simple. You just say, upload videos, here's the tags I want, train the model, and then, there's still some glitches, but then you can download it to this Edge device and be off and running, right?
That was really impressive. That custom AI, customvision.ai.com, really impressive. I followed your lead when you shared that anecdotes, and so I have all 4 of my family members as the pictures that I've trained up there, and I don't have a very good data set for my eldest. I realized that my cameras and my photography were something I picked up more in the past several years, so my youngest got the benefit of that, right? But I did then put up an untrained family photo of the 4 of us.
Yeah.
And it's still picked out from 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. So my eldest was maybe 8 at the time. And it still picked her out with like 45% recognition. Me, 90%. My wife, 68%. And then my youngest, who, again, would have been 3 at the time, still at like a 45-50% identification of her. It was incredible.
Yeah, and that's a similar experience I did. So me and Kano, and then my youngest son walked up and said, "Can I upload a picture of me?" You know, when I trained it's on the 2, and it went and picked him up as 100% me. And then he's like, well,
"Lucky him."
Yeah. And then my middle brother, what about him, Dad? And so I uploaded, and it was me, not Keanu Reeves. And then he's like, well, let's throw in the oldest boy. So I did my oldest son, and 100% me. And I was like, wow, mind-boggling. And so my next test is that we have some twins in the family, so we're going to put that in and see if we can do that, right? So here's the crazy thing is I'm not into visual. I had to learn Visual Studio. I'm not a developer. I'm more of the entrepreneur, startup. I love new things, but it was that fast. Within 2 days, I was able to build, AI models and test them and deploy them and have the kids working with them. I was like, this is something different right here, because it's allowing the general public to participate in this experiment now. So, but Andrew, we need to get you in on this.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that this development kit, the Azure Percept, is going to be so powerful for is that experimenting with AI is now low cost, right? So there's other platforms and devices you can use, but the way that they've tied all this together is making it so low cost, and all the tools that they're putting in place are making it so easy to experiment that it is perfect for proof of concept, right? So if you want to bring an AI solution all the way through to production at scale, there's going to be a lot of costs and development time associated with that, but you need to figure out what's the most important thing to go after. And if you were to try your 10, 15, 20 ideas in a very expensive way, you're going to very quickly lose the confidence of your leadership and their willingness to invest in bringing AI into the business. And so having a development kit like this allows you to prototype all of your ideas at very, very low cost and see what has some sort of traction before you need to go and customize anything. Or since they have a lot of very low code applications there, you don't even have to be a software developer to be able to experiment and see, could we possibly use this platform or AI to increase our security, right? Because a lot of proof of concepts, when people look at AI type of stuff, they're always seeing things like these papers that are like adding 0.01% more accuracy to things. But in the business world, you don't even need 90% accuracy in a lot of cases, because a lot of this stuff is automation. A lot of this stuff is just value add to your revenue streams. Just getting 70% accuracy could be a very valid business use case. And you might be able to get there with a dev kit, right? And then if you can increase revenue through a single project proof of concept dev kit, that might pay for the dev kit itself and start funding your development of bringing that out to production at scale. So yeah, just the low cost of this and all the tools that they're wrapping around it are going to be, I think, game changing for businesses who want to start experimenting with how AI can be applied to their business.
I want to build on something Andrew just said there, because one of my own personal challenges in having conversations with people about AI, there's an awful lot of confusion over what exactly is AI.
Mm.
And a lot of conflation between the artificial intelligence and machine learning world, for instance, where people misunderstand that the conclusions and inferences and predictions about things is more machine learning than it is artificial intelligence, which is the cognitive services input type of stuff. So when you have a tool like this that allows you to prototype thinking, that puts examples, tangible examples, in front of executives that previously did not have an appreciation for the difference between the technologies and the depth that each of these things can do. Because you start to mention just the two letters AI, and the head of HR
Yeah.
is going to envision, for instance, all the cognitive biases and the horror stories about how it's not conducive to giving loans out fairly to people and that type of stuff. Right. So AI is not the oppressive Terminator coming along type of thing, and this technology, to Andrew's points, is at a price point where you can prototype things out that help people take their abstract thinking into something more concrete that they can choose whether or not to invest in.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
yeah.
one of the first questions that I get from businesses that are trying to get their start in machine learning in particular is, how much data do I need?
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to go out and make your own device and try to bring this to some level of quality of a solution before you figure that out, you're going to spend a lot of money. So the better way to do it is to use something low cost, cheap like this, and just start collecting the data. If it ends up working out where you're starting to get some good performance and you can start building a business case around it, great. That answers your question, how much data you need. But don't go and spend a whole bunch of engineering development time trying to get yourself a custom solution that's targeted to what you think you might need for a business case, because I can't tell you how many times I've started a machine learning project and multiple times partway through, we're changing what we think is the most important data to collect, and we have to recollect these data sets. So the best thing to do is get something that's just kind of a whole offering right here, and just start collecting the data and playing with it, because that's the best way to start framing the actual problem and building the business viability around it.
Oh, I think and I want to jump on your points, Andrew. Is start framing the data, start taking action, start building the prototypes, and just taking action. That's the thing you can do with this device. It's an MVP generator, and Microsoft gives you the wrapper to get started, to get your quick wins, get in front of your executives, show them the examples to take the next action. The first question is, how long will it take, and can I develop something with this? And Microsoft has enabled you to get your foot in the door, which is, I think, incredible in the package they've provided for this dev kit. The low costing, I just went on their website because they're allowing this for pre-orders now. And I think the price point is around $350 for the camera.
It depends. So what you're looking at there in the picture right there has the dev kit is on the left, the camera is in the center, and the microphone array is on the right there. That mic is the audio piece. That's an add-on for another $75.
Yeah. So that's, and a quick story here is, about a year ago, I did a 3D printing initiative where I said, does anybody have 3D printers in their homes that they want to print? It was face shields at the time. And what I found is there were 400 3D printers that were available and that signed up. And I took inventory of all those 3D printers, and I was like, well, which one is the most common model? And it was an Ender 3. And I looked at the price point of that, and it was $200, I think, for the Ender 3. So when it gets around $300, you see the price point. That's something where people anywhere can start buying and experimenting. So I think that's kind of around there is that magic number, because I did a similar experiment where I said, do we have laser cutters to cut the clear plastic? And the price point for that is like $1,000 to $10,000, right? And I knew of two people that had laser cutters. So it went from 400 at a point of $200 to, so that's what another point is. I think, Andrew, you're right on, is the price point for this dev kit. We're getting into really nice equipment now at $200, $300, $400, where people can go home and make some quick wins and get started with AI and vision projects, right? So it's quite incredible. I think these are some of the things that are combining at this time to make this solution just, I think it's going to be game changing.
Yeah, and another thing on all the tools that are surrounding this, I'm excited to dive in and play with these tools a little bit more like you guys have. But I was thinking back to the last sort of sensor-based machine learning project that I was working on, and we were trying to rapidly prototype at low cost too to prove the business viability. And I pulled a Raspberry Pi off the shelf, which works really great for interfacing with a bunch of different hardware, right? And then having the Linux platform to be able to write whatever software and make it really easy. I use Docker as well. Just the development time that I had in connecting up all of those different components to make a data collection system, it took me a couple of weeks to get that to production quality. And then there's multiple devices that we then had to organize. How do we want to store the data from multiple devices? And that was even before going through and analyzing the data, right? And what you're talking about here is in 2 days, you receive the device, you set it up, connected it to your Azure, your subscription there, and then you started prototyping ideas right out of the box without having to do any of the data collection system, without having to put together any of the analysis tools. It is incredible how fast you can go from just receiving the device to trying something out. And as somebody who's had the pain of developing all of those data collection tools, it can't be understated how much that's worth, a few $100 over a Raspberry Pi. Just the time alone saved is worth that added cost.
Yeah,
comparatively.
I started to smile when you were sharing your story there, because I spent a week trying to get a hello world message on an Arduino once.
Yeah, I think that's a huge point. And somebody had asked, Tyler says he couldn't be here. I know Tyler was scheduled to be on here, but he's our other AI guy that loves to be on the show. But somebody had asked on one of my LinkedIn posts, how does this compare to other dev kits? And Andrew, that reminded me of a point, is that there's expandability beyond this, right? So you can see Microsoft has this set up. It automatically sets up the IoT hub, and then you got a bunch of devices listed, and that you could send messages to the IoT hub. But here's where it goes even further, is then you can stream analytics to Power BI. You can create blob storage inside of Azure. The storage is now integrated and easier to set up too. Whereas a Raspberry Pi is just the hardware, and then you have to set up and map everything, which can be so difficult with all the keys. But now you're operating inside of the Azure environment, and everything is integrated, which is going to, my setup time is going to be so much faster. And that kind of leads me into, I'm planning in a couple weeks to do another live show where I take, my vision is take this system dev kit, train some advanced models, extract some of what it finds in the images and the videos, message that to the cloud, either stream it. Maybe I do 2 routes: stream analytics to a Power BI report where it's updating real time, and then another one to blob storage where it analyzes that data and maybe looks for trends, right? So Owen and Andrew, any other ideas that are generating that, maybe in a couple weeks that we
we have an event in a couple of weeks that's I'm thinking about. But one of the thoughts that you just prompted in my head in looking over, I forget exactly where I saw the reference, but in looking through the documentation of the various different web pages I've been on in the past couple of days, Microsoft is approaching the hardware aspect from I think it's an open source hardware type of factor. So the dev kit, the camera, and the microphone array that we see right now is not intended to be the only factor. We may very well see Azure Percept stuff in wearables.
Wow. Yeah.
Right?
So getting started here, and then we're going to see potentially expansion beyond this. Oh, that it's limitless. Wow. Yeah. So it's just mind-boggling where this is going to go. So Andrew, your thoughts? So I'm, the expansion, the extension of this. What can you see?
I don't know. I was just when you mentioned having a live dashboard and quickly prototyping something, my brain started having a bunch of ideas of quick little things that might be fun to do. And one of the things that I try to do on live streams that's taken a lot of work is not saying a lot. And I think it'd be fantastic, and I think I might try this, is use the microphone array on here to detect right? And like count them. And it'd be so cool to have like a little dashboard of the live streams that are done and seeing if my count is going down. And maybe you could use the vision to do gesticulation, right? Like how much am I using my hands in a video or something? I don't know. That's what was popping in my head, is maybe something that could be a quick, fun, easy thing to prototype and maybe pull that all the way out to Power BI.
Oh my gosh. Well, let's do that, because I was just on a call with Mike Carlo, Microsoft MVP yesterday, and he was showing me how easy it is to build a, connect to an API and, send the messaging to Power BI and show that, live. There's some live components that we can set up real quick.
Yeah. And maybe a word cloud, like, I don't know how good their tools are for real time voice to text, but I gotta imagine that's one of the modules that they have, and then we could just have it live update the word cloud as we go through the episode.
On the speech.microsoft.com, there are specifically two separate tiles. One is the speech to text, the other one is the text to speech.
Okay.
So
built in out of the box. Sorry.
Cool. So we've been going for 43 minutes. As always, we once these conversations get going, they really blossom and get really interesting. But I want to pivot a little bit into, Andrew and I have noticed every time we do one of these, what another difference that Microsoft has been, their strategy seems to be, is enabling people to take their products and expand with them, right? It's kind of like a gateway. Power BI is a great way to machine learning and all these other services you have in Azure. And you now see the Percept is they're giving you the tools to get started and then kind of expand and grow. And but they're doing it in a way that's almost staggered. You can jump into Power BI with implicit modules and get started fast. And if you want to, you can dig into the DAX and the M and then SQL and Python and R and advance further. And I see the Percept kind of as the introduction. And then you can see now that you can start with the no code, the easy, and then you can build on top of yourself and get those quick wins. That's what's so brilliant about this strategy, I think, is they're allowing so many quick wins. But with that, a lot of us are starting our own businesses. And, how do you sell AI, Edge? How do you sell all these new technologies? How, like Eoin, you had said, when you get into conversations about AI, there's a lot of confusion. There's a lot of fear, right? This is all new. There's a lot of terms that people don't understand. So maybe we go round table real quick and next 10 to 15 minutes about maybe some of the top tips you have for selling, new technology like this. So Eoin, maybe we start with you. Are you ready, or do you have some ideas?
So it's not so much of selling the technology as understanding the value of data. It's the value of data is that it helps to tell a story. You can take any. I forget which president it was. I think it was Roosevelt, who got so frustrated at because he kept talking to economists who the first economist would say, on the one hand, the economy is going to get better, and on the other hand, it's going to get worse. And the next economist would say, on the one hand, the economy is going to get worse, and on the other hand, it could get better. And he said, what I need is an economist with no hands. Right? But they're looking at the same data set. Right? So you can take any data and make it tell the story that you like if you're sufficiently talented with statistics. And the rest of the world doesn't know any better or any different. Right? So it's, again, not the technology, but the data points that it gets you access to when you're doing quality management. There's quality assurance, quality planning, and quality control from the project management PMBOK PMP world, right? And so with those, with quality assurance is getting ready for quality control type of thing, and you have to figure out how you're going to collect data. This is just another measuring tool. This is just another means of observing data points in action, and thinking of ways that you can dip into the data stream unobserved, so that you're not disturbing Schrodinger's cat, for instance, with the Hawthorne effect. That's so. And if you're looking to sell data analysis, sell the understanding of the world that they want to understand. Understand the questions that are being asked, and then figure out what are the objective data points that can help you answer that question before you even start to collect the data.
Well, those are great points. Understanding the real problem that the customer is facing, and is there a story or an answer that's in the data that's now being collected all over the place? Can you help pull that story out? I think is the great, a lot of time I got stuck with that too, Owen, is I was selling the tool, right? I was going around, I was like, Power BI, you got to use it. You got to use it. And people are like, I don't want to buy Power BI. I was like, yeah, but Power BI can look at your data and it can give you insights that could save you time, money. It can solve your problem. What's your biggest problem right now? And it's like, well, this step in the process, we think it's causing the bottleneck. And then I look at the report and the data. I was like, well, it's actually not that, but there's a step over here that if you fix this, it would solve everything. And once you solving their data and find solutions, then it's not really selling anymore. It's problem solving and understanding your clients' real pain points and using data as a tool to help solve their problems, right? So, great point. So is that, do you have another one, Ian, or I was going for two? But...
Well, so on that front, for me personally, where I find the greatest value in data is where are there gaps in it? That's so again, drawing on another anecdotal story is the planes coming back to England after bombing runs and such, and they're trying to figure out how do they improve the survival rate, because a lot of planes were falling down. And so they did an analysis of where the planes had been hit that were making it back, and wherever those planes had not taken fire, those were the places that they reinforced on the planes, because clearly those were the planes that made it back, right? So the
survivorship bias.
Yeah. A very quick example in the modern world. I am eagerly waiting for additional data from a project management outfit over in the UK who promised us a report at the end of January talking about the world and the state of project management. If you take a look at the last one that they put out, this was a survey done of all the top project managers, presumably in the industry in the UK, where they said that there was nothing worthwhile doing that was challenging. When you take a look at the analysis that they did, challenging on one ratio, value on the other, and 3 quadrants had plenty of information, complete blank in the upper right corner. And if there's nothing hard, if there's nothing worthwhile doing that's hard, then what are you being paid for, people? And so that's part of the reason why I'm in this AI ML world at this point, because I'm looking forward to helping improve the lives of everyone with data, that they can understand the way that they can access it.
Oh, great points. Very good. Thank you, Owen. So Andrew, we'll go to you, and do you have a couple of good points to help with people trying to sell their data services?
Yeah, the first one is always find your partner with the domain knowledge. right? So one of the great things about working with data is you can take these tools and apply them to all kinds of different industries. So I've used it in the automotive industry, I've used it in consumer goods, I've used it in food services. The list goes on, right? You can just take these skill sets and start using them across domains. But what's really needed is somebody in that domain who understands what does this data actually mean. Because if you're just looking at strings and numbers and things of that nature, it's really easy to fool yourself that you're creating value when you're just answering questions that aren't valuable to that domain, to that industry. So especially when you're starting out, you need to find, when you're starting to apply these tools, the domain expert, whether it's within the company or the client or whatever, or other resources outside of your client, to bring in that domain knowledge to the task that you're working on. Because a lot of times when you start in this, you don't really have a choice of industry that you can focus in on. So you want to be able to focus on your tool set development and lean on other people for the domain expertise. The second thing then is niching down. Once you start using these tools and you start seeing what kind of problems you get excited about and maybe come more naturally to you and interest you more, don't be afraid to niche down fast and very, very narrow, because there are so many businesses that can use data better, and so few people, relatively speaking, that are able to do this work, just from an employment shortage standpoint, that you can find almost as narrow of a niche as you want and do very well in that space. So that's something that I've been working on the last couple of years, is not just being the full generalist. I can go and do all kinds of different algorithms across a whole bunch of different domains, and I'm starting to narrow down the industries that I work in and the tool sets that I use. And interestingly enough, Charles, earlier you were mentioning how there's now more and more no-code tools. And I've always prided myself of having that strong software background, being able to write C, C++, and I eventually begrudgingly went to Python because I was a C purist back in the day, right? And I'm finding the longer I'm in data, as a data professional, the more I'm actually starting to go towards no-code tools or low-code tools, because they just allow you to get business insights so much faster. I was always attracted to the academic high performance, whatever, where you have to get down to the nitty gritty. But that just takes so long to develop and often doesn't bring the ROI that businesses are looking for. So yeah, it's just been an interesting transition to do less code, niche down, and find those domain experts.
Yeah. Oh, great point. I have a follow-up story on the low code or no code. So Power BI, there's the language of M, which is really convoluted and hard to understand. But Power BI as a package has buttons for all the commands, right? So then you don't have to worry about spelling or syntax errors or commas and stuff. You just click the button and then it's self-documenting too. And I was like, wow, this is, I remember, in Mathematica and Maple, when you're programming, you got to watch your commas and you got to watch your in parentheses and stuff. But these buttons takes all of that away and you get to your insights faster. And that's what I want, is faster insights. I don't want to deal with all the other shit.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
My life is so much better now that I don't have to deal with null pointer exceptions. So I think I'm done with C for a while until a client really needs it. But there's a lot of other ways to do embedded AI other than just going straight down to C.
Well, just one quick comment on this though, because I do have a pet peeve with the reference to low code. So as a programmer, once upon a time, years and years ago, doing job control language and that type of stuff, I appreciate how we look at the slang that we use as low code. But for anyone else that's watching this video that hasn't done this type of stuff before, if you're a business decision maker, for instance, and you want to get started with this, it's easier to pick up the low code stuff because there's so much less of it to understand. There's less of a barrier to get to it. There still is a degree of you have to know grammar.
Right.
I was on a training class yesterday, app in a day from Microsoft. I can endorse that if people are registered for it. But there was somebody who was participating in that class from Canada using a French keyboard, and suddenly the semicolons and the commas in the formulas that they wanted to use weren't working right. Right? I can't think of a more low code type of platform than Power Apps.
Yeah.
Right? But the simple fact that you needed to use a double semicolon if you're using a French keyboard, there's still a few bugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and the way of thinking too. I mean, like the way that you structure the flow of control and data is still programming basics of like if then else statements, switches, case type stuff, while loops and all that. So like the structures are still there. And I was actually just in Azure Data Factory quite a bit yesterday, working through some of the dynamic expressions to generate file names from whatever was happening earlier in the process.
Right.
And like, yes, it's basically a no code or low code tool, but you still need to have some of those basic structures as well as paying attention to syntax, like you said, to enable the more powerful application. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, and something you sparked in my head, going through some of the tutorials and such, and you copy and paste into the various editors that you work with, I was off by an indentation space. Right, and so it took me 2 hours to figure that out. So
was that Python or YAML?
It was Python, actually.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So yeah, the progression of no code, this understanding of no code, and the levels you can go with no code, and still there's growth to be had in.
and it's still better than it was.
Yeah, that's true. It's where we are now from where we were 5 years ago. Even it's quite a change. So I'm going to end with this. So my two top tips for anybody wanting to start their own business and get into it. I take this back to 2 years ago when I left the corporate world and I started my own business and I went out selling, right? And I think I lost. I called people up, got real excited about Power BI, and I think I got rejected by the first 6 people, right? So, but I got rejected. That was the point. Is I learned from each one. I learned why they rejected me, and I asked them the questions. It's like, okay, why don't you think Power BI? And they gave me great feedback. One was, you're selling me the tool. I don't need to use a new tool. Another one was like, well, this is high security data. I wouldn't share this with you. There were all these different things that I was learning about each one and all the different rejection types. And so my advice for anybody new is go out there and get rejected as many times as you can, because you learn from each one of those, right? And then you learn who will work with you, who wants to work with you, who needs this. And along Owen's point, I think a big issue is a lot of times salespeople, and you hear this a lot, is they're pushing and they're not listening to my problems, right? So what I do a lot of times is I listen to their problems, and sometimes Power BI is not the solution. And I say, you know what, I just don't think this is the right fit for this. And then I listen carefully, and a lot of times they may not say the underlying fear or problem that they're having, so you kind of have to interpret between the lines. But once you understand the real problem, then you can attack and address that problem. But I've learned not to. I've got all these other things and upgrades and stuff. Throw those all out. They have a problem. That's their world right now. Solve their problem. Give them a solution to the problem, and then you can talk about the other things that can happen, because that's their world right now. And so those are my 2 tips for anybody getting into the data analytics world is, listen to the problem and really take action, go out, find the customers, learn from your failures, and just start doing it. So with that, wow, we have talked for an hour. It was so much fun, guys. And then, I'm looking forward to, we have our hackathon event, Owen, coming up. But after that, maybe we can get back together and share more about what we're learning along this journey, right? We're all learning about IoT on the edge, Azure AI on the edge, the Percept device. And it's been I've had a wonderful weekend. You can tell I've been geeked out all weekend. I've been just doing this for 4 straight days.
I got so many messages from you in the last few days. I can tell you're excited.
So I can tell you that when the working hours of the support team are, because I trade emails with them real time at 11:30 at night. So anyway, this was a hoot. Thank you for inviting me. I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, sounds good. And just stay on for a second. I'm going to end the broadcast and we'll do a wrap up real quick. One second.
All right.
Here. Bye, everyone.
All right. Bye.
All right.